Hello everybody. Since I was 12, I've wanted a Viper. I finally purchased my first Viper. It's a third generation 2003. Very excited. However, there's a Viper thread out there where someone warns you about using the parking brake because of a sort of manufactured flaw in the way it works with an automatic adjuster that causes the piston to continuously being pushed outward over time, which causes uneven pad wear and potential warping of discs and whatnot. So I purchased a manual. Inside the manual, under the area for parking brake, it doesn't consider the piston a serviceable part. However, there is operation instructions on how the parking brake works, and from there you can deduce how to service the parking brake. So essentially, the problem is that there's a worm shaft and a driven disc. The driven disc is threaded to the worm shaft, so I would like to show you that in more detail. This is the driver's side parking brake caliper. And inside the caliper, here's the piston. Every time you pull your parking brake cable, the spring will cause the piston to push outward. So you pull the cable, release the cable. Pull the cable, release the cable. However, over time, every time you pull the cable, the piston extends out further and further and further and further and further over time, until eventually, when you release the cable, the piston at dead bottom, the piston is sticking out like this, and that's way, way, way too far, and that's what's causing uneven pad wear on the inside pad. So this would be the outside pad. Your tire is on this side, or the outside of the car is on this side. This is the inside of the car. So what causes this piston to stick out more and more? So if I pull the piston out, inside the piston is the worm shaft and driven disc. So notice that every time you pull the cable, so I pull the parking brake cable, the piston is pushed out via this worm shaft and driven disc, and then you release the cable and the piston goes back inside. However, this is the automatic adjuster, so over time you keep pulling the parking brake cable, this spins up a little bit more every single time you use it, more and more and more and more and more, eventually until it's sitting up to the very top and your piston sitting out really, really far. So the solution that I'm thinking of, and then the obvious solution here is that we need to find the place for the driven disc to remain permanently in place on the worm shaft. And so maybe super glue. I really don't want to super glue this. I really love this car. I don't want to do anything kind of cheap like that, but super glue, or maybe even drilling a hole through here and putting like a piece of wire through it so that the driven disc never passes a certain point. If you think of creative solutions, please post them in the comments. I'm still thinking of a solution. Hopefully, I could just put a ton of grease in here, just grease the crap out of everything when I reassemble it all together again. And then maybe just having more grease in rebuilding the caliper will cause it to work correctly. But it could just be just an engineering flaw in just the way this was designed, that just over time the grease just kind of wears down and it just causes poor functioning of this driven disc and worm shaft. But this is essentially it. This is the Viper parking brake, driver's side. It might just be maybe just one side works worse than the others. For me personally, it was the passenger side that had the uneven wear. The driver's side was fine. I worked on the driver's side before I worked on the passenger side, but I'll be taking apart the passenger side next and investigating how all this looks. But yep, that's it. That's the Viper parking brake.